Good morning, it's July 2nd, 2022. I haven't made an update in a while, but I'm going to walk out there and show everyone my avocado trees. It's a foggy morning, you can probably hear the neighbors' roosters. But before I go over there, I'll briefly mention I got a couple of dead trees here. This is the one that last winter, it was the first one to start frosting back. And this one was what I called my #1 tree, so to speak, in a video in March. This tree almost survived. I did get some leaves on the stem, but they died back, and I thought, well, I'll just give it more time and maybe it'll sprout a root sucker. It never did. Finally, I dug it out and then put it in fresh soil to hope that possibly it might regrow, and it's apparently not going to, so I'll probably reuse this soil for some other purpose. I think the problem here was that I was experimenting and put too much clay in the mix, because when I dug it out, I felt like this soil was really too heavy based on the knowledge that I have now. And most avocado videos will tell you don't mix too much native soil into your pot. So I think what I've learned is you really shouldn't go more than about a quarter native soil, and otherwise, you know, use a good draining mix like they tell you. So yeah, these aren't going to regrow most likely. However, when you're experimenting like I'm doing, you're likely to have some dead trees in the end, so no big surprise. So let's go down there and talk about the ones that are doing better. Got a few other things in here besides the avocados. This is a ornamental blueberry, and I've got a fig tree, and I even have a small fig in here. That is a Celeste fig, and then this one is a LSU fig. And LSU is not really meant for my zone, so I'm just gambling with this one. But it's growing very well in the pot. It doesn't seem ready to make any figs yet. It's just in a strong vegetative phase. So let's talk about some of the avocado seedlings. These are coming along pretty well. Remember, I started these, I would say, late last autumn, and the seeds took varying lengths of time to begin to grow. It just seems like they have their own timetable, and you can't rush things, so I even had a few that didn't begin sprouting until just a few months ago. But what's interesting is just how different all of these are, because I would go to the store and I would just look for different suppliers or different shapes or colors of avocados to begin with. And so once they start growing, you see very different patterns in the leaves. You know, here, these are, how would I describe it? Almost like dome-shaped leaves on this tree. And then, you know, this one curls more. This one, the leaves are flatter, so to speak. And here's some more with kind of a messy pattern, so to speak, of how the leaf growth comes out of the stem. You know, here's one with a little more variety of color in how the leaves appear. This one is the only survivor I have from last year. And notice the stem did die. This one made a root sucker, it started regrowing. So, you know, out of almost a year of experimenting, this is the only one that came through a winter, but I don't want to brag too much, because I did take this plant into the shed during nights when it was below 20 degrees. So I'm not going to say that I have a variety that literally survives a 7B winter, but this is at least an interesting prospect. And I've got, you know, so many more seedlings here. I may get a few others this next coming spring that are colder tolerant than average. So just looking around, I've got you know, some of these that have started to grow up into close to an intermediate range of growth in just a year. I've already repotted this one. This tree's growing very well, and one thing I've learned from last year, don't put too much faith in the vigor of growth. That doesn't tell you a lot about the cold hardiness of the tree. I think if anything, cold hardiness, you might have some sense of it if the leaves are kind of thick feeling, kind of a waxy sensation, and if they're very delicate and slender and thin, they're less likely to survive frosts. So I think it's good that I've got a lot of variety in appearances, because that means I've got different genetics here, and out of that I might discover something. This tree is kind of interesting because I've even seen this in someone else's videos, that once in a while you get one that just doesn't make very good leaves. This was making some yellowish green leaves, and it was marginal in the shade, but as soon as I put it in the sun would start burning these leaves. They just couldn't make enough chlorophyll. And I don't think that was a problem with the soil. Most of these have basically the same soil. I was mixing it around the same time. But if you look down here at the pit, even the pit is kind of a yellowish green color. So kind of the same story, that just as you have different leaf patterns, sometimes you just get a tree that doesn't want to grow. So let's move on to some of the larger trees. This is my dwarf Fuerte, and I think it's doing all right, but I do see some odd singed areas, so to speak, along the edges of these leaves, and I've looked at some other people's explanations. I can't convince myself of any of them, really. I don't think I'm over or under watering this tree. I don't think that's sunburn, because I'd probably see it on all of the leaves. So I'm not going to worry too much about it. I mean, the plant's growing and it's expanding, so I'll be cautious, try not to over or underwater it. You know, if I see more around the edges, then maybe I'll start to conclude it's sun scald. So move on. This is the Brogden. This tree's doing nicely, and it's probably going to start putting out some side branches pretty soon. So I'm kind of more pleased with this than I expected to be. This is a variety from South Florida. It's not meant to be cold hardy as to the degree that the Texas varieties are. So I've never seen anyone try and grow a Brogden in North Carolina. So that will certainly be its own experiment. Here's my kumquat. As small as this tree is, I'm getting some fruits in there. They have a nice aroma. It kind of reminds me of soap scent, I suppose, whatever that perfume is they put in soaps. So I've picked off some of the very smaller ones and tried to leave a few. And we'll see if any of these grow. Right here is a elderberry bush my dad gave me. I really should put that in the ground somewhere. Here is the Lila tree, which really is probably the best of all of my trees. And it's beginning to flush again, and I've been waiting for this. It looks like it's going to begin filling in the center of the tree, so it won't look quite so scrawny and scraggly. That's what you want to see when you're growing one of these. And finally, here's the Joey tree. And I've talked about some of my struggles with this, but I'm beginning to get some flushing leaves again. So still have the graft wrapped. Just gonna give this one a little bit more care, and I don't think I'm gonna repot it anywhere in the near future. Just be careful with it and hope it continues to flush out. I'd like it to bulk out kind of as that Lila has. So that's the state of my trees, July 2nd.